First story. Number 1. The Enfield Poltergeist in 1977. In a modest home in Enfield, London, Peggy Hodgson and her 4 children were living an ordinary life until one fateful evening in 1977. It began with peculiar occurrences. Beds shook, knocking sounds reverberated through the walls, and objects inexplicably moved across rooms. At first, Peggy dismissed it as the children playing tricks, but as the events escalated, denial became impossible. The activity seemed to center around Janet, the 11-year-old daughter. She began to experience episodes of levitation, witnessed by her siblings and neighbors. The situation worsened when Janet's voice transformed into a guttural, gravelly tone, claiming to be Bill, a former resident of the house who had died there. He relayed details about his life and death that were later corroborated, though no one in the family had any prior knowledge of him. The Hodgsons called the police when a heavy armchair moved unexplainably across the living room floor. The officers could find no logical explanation, and one even reported seeing the chair move on its own. They referred the family to the Society for Psychical Research, SPREE, and investigators Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair soon took up the case. Over several months, Gross and Playfair recorded the disturbances, capturing eerie phenomena on tape. They heard strange knocking patterns and chilling voices emanating from Janet. Skeptics argued that the children were fabricating the events, but some occurrences, such as heavy furniture moving without any physical intervention, were difficult to dismiss. Janet's levitations were also witnessed by multiple neighbors and documented by investigators. In one incident, she was reportedly flung across the room by an unseen force. The media caught wind of the case, and soon the Hodgsons' home became a circus of journalists, skeptics, and paranormal enthusiasts. While some photos taken during Janet's supposed levitations could be interpreted as her simply jumping off the bed, other pieces of evidence defied rational explanation. The family's terror was palpable, and their plight resonated with people worldwide. By 1979, the disturbances began to subside as abruptly as they had started. The family attributed the resolution to their relentless prayers and assistance from spiritual advisors. However, Janet later confessed that a small fraction of the activity had been fabricated to appease investigators and the media, but she insisted that the majority of events were genuine and beyond her comprehension. For decades later, Janet reflected on the ordeal, admitting it had left a lasting impact on her life. She maintained that she had no control over most of what happened, and that she truly believed the spirit of Bill had inhabited their home. The Enfield poltergeist remains one of the most documented and debated paranormal cases in history. While skeptics argue it was an elaborate hoax, the sheer volume of witnesses, recordings, and physical evidence keeps the mystery alive, making it a cornerstone of paranormal research. And story number 2, the Amityville Horror, 1975. In December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, moved into a charming colonial-style home at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. The house, with its elegant architecture and waterfront view, seemed like a dream come true. However, the home came with a dark history. Just a year prior, Ronald Defy Jr. had brutally murdered his entire family within its walls, claiming he was driven by malevolent voices. The Lutz family initially dismissed the house's past, confident that they could build a happy life there. But within days, their optimism began to wane. Strange odors wafted through the house, and cold spots appeared in rooms where no draft could explain them. George, a normally even-tempered man, became increasingly irritable and obsessed with maintaining the home's fireplace, complaining he could never get warm. Kathy began having vivid nightmares about the murders, and their youngest daughter, Missy, befriended an imaginary friend she called Jody, who she described as a demonic pig with glowing red eyes. The activity quickly escalated. Doors slammed shut without warning, and foul green slime oozed from the walls and keyholes. At night, the family heard disembodied voices whispering their names, and the children's beds shook violently. George began waking at precisely 3:15 a.m. every night, the exact time Ronald Defay had committed the murders. One night, he discovered hoof prints in the snow outside their house, despite there being no animals around. Desperate for answers, the Lutzes invited a priest to bless the house. As the priest sprinkled holy water and recited prayers, he was overwhelmed by an unseen force. He fled the home, warning the family to leave immediately. However, the Lutzes, financially tied to the property, chose to stay, hoping the disturbances would subside. Instead, the phenomena grew more sinister. Kathy claimed she was physically touched and scratched by an invisible entity, while George found himself drawn to the basement, where he discovered a hidden red room not listed in the house's blueprints. Missy told her parents that Jody wanted them to stay forever. Fearful for their lives, the family fled the house after just 28 days, leaving all their belongings behind. Their story captured national attention and inspired both fascination and skepticism. The Lutzes worked with author Jay Anson to publish The Amityville Horror, a book that chronicled their harrowing experience. It quickly became a bestseller and inspired a series of films, cementing the Amityville house as one of the most infamous haunted locations in the world. Skeptics have questioned the Lutzes' account, suggesting it was a hoax designed to profit from the home's tragic history. However, the Lutzes maintained their story until their deaths. Later owners reported no paranormal activity, but the house's eerie reputation persists. Whether a genuine haunting or an elaborate fabrication, the Amityville Horror endures as a chilling tale that blurs the line between reality and fiction. Story number 3. The Bell Witch Haunting, 1817-1820. In the early 19th century, the Bell family lived on a remote farm in Adams, Tennessee, leading a peaceful and uneventful life. However, in 1817, a series of terrifying events began to unfold that would become one of the most famous hauntings in American history. The disturbances started subtly. John Bell, the patriarch of the family, noticed strange animal-like tracks around the property, including prints resembling a dog with massive claws. Soon after, eerie knocking sounds began emanating from the walls and floors of their home, growing louder with each passing night. The Bell children complained of their bed covers being yanked off as they slept, and invisible hands slapped them awake. What made this haunting unique was its intelligence. The entity, which the family came to call the Bell Witch, began to speak. It identified itself as Kate, claiming to be the spirit of a neighbor who had cursed the Bell family over a land dispute. The voice mocked the Bells relentlessly, mimicking their conversations and hurling insults. Kate particularly despised John Bell and promised to torment him until his death. Word of the Bell Witch spread, drawing visitors from across the region. One such guest was Andrew Jackson, a military general who would later become the President of the United States. Intrigued by the stories, Jackson arrived at the Bell farm with a group of men and experienced the haunting firsthand. According to legend, their wagons suddenly became immovable as they approached the property. Jackson reportedly exclaimed, "By the Eternal, this is the work of the witch." That night, the entity physically attacked one of his men, leading Jackson to flee, swearing never to return. For the next several years, the Bell Witch escalated its attacks. It tormented the family relentlessly, particularly targeting John Bell. The entity's malicious intent culminated in John's mysterious illness in 1820. His health rapidly deteriorated, with symptoms of facial twitching, difficulty swallowing, and unexplained seizures. On the morning of his death, the family discovered a strange vial of black liquid near his bedside. When a drop was tested on the family cat, the animal immediately perished. The Bell Witch gleefully claimed responsibility for John's death, stating it had poisoned him. Even after John's death, the haunting did not entirely cease. The spirit lingered for a few years before declaring it would return in 7 years. True to its word, it briefly reappeared in 1828, tormenting John Bell Jr., before vanishing once again. To this day, locals claim that the Bell Witch haunts the caves near the old Bell farm, where strange noises and apparitions have been reported. The Bell Witch haunting has inspired countless books, documentaries, and films. While skeptics attribute the phenomena to hysteria or exaggeration, the Bell family's detailed accounts and the testimony of numerous witnesses continue to captivate those fascinated by the paranormal. The story stands as one of the most chilling and enduring tales of supernatural vengeance. For story number 4, The Haunting of the Perron Family. 1971. In January 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perron, along with their 5 daughters, moved into a sprawling 14-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Known as the Arnold Estate, the house seemed like the perfect place to raise their family. However, what the parents didn't know was that their dream home came with a dark and disturbing history that would change their lives forever. Almost immediately after settling in, strange occurrences began. At first, they were benign. Carolyn would find small piles of dirt in the center of freshly cleaned floors, or items would go missing only to reappear in unusual places. The family often heard faint whispers, though they couldn't determine the source. These minor disturbances soon gave way to something much more sinister. The pair and children reported seeing shadowy figures moving through the house, and their beds shook violently at night. One daughter claimed to wake up to a disembodied hand stroking her hair, while another saw an apparition of a woman in an old dress who stood silently at the foot of her bed. Carolyn, the mother, bore the brunt of the haunting. She often felt an icy presence and claimed that she was physically pushed or pinched by an unseen force. She later discovered that the house had a grim past, with multiple deaths, suicides, and alleged murders linked to its previous occupants. The most malevolent spirit was believed to be Bathsheba Sherman, a woman rumored to have been a practicing witch who had lived on the property in the 19th century. Legend claimed Bathsheba had sacrificed her infant child to Satan and cursed the land before her death. Carolyn became Bathsheba's primary target. She reported the spirit attacking her physically, and at one point, she awoke to see a horrifying apparition of a woman with a twisted face and hollow eyes looming over her bed. Whispered for help. The parents reached out to renowned paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens arrived at the farmhouse and immediately sensed a dark presence. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, confirmed that the house was plagued by multiple spirits, with Bathsheba being the most dangerous. She warned the family that the entity wanted to possess Carolyn and drive the parents from their home. The Warrens conducted a seance to confront the spirit, but instead of alleviating the haunting, it intensified. During the seance, Carolyn was reportedly thrown across the room by an unseen force and began speaking in a voice not her own. After this terrifying experience, Roger Perrin demanded the Warrens leave, fearing for his wife's sanity and safety. The Perrins lived in the house for nearly a decade, enduring the hauntings until they could afford to move in 1980. Despite their ordeal, the family maintained that the spirits were real and that they had been irrevocably changed by their experiences. The Perrin story later inspired the 2013 horror film The Conjuring, but those who lived through it insist that the real events were even more horrifying than any Hollywood adaptation. 35. The Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, 1936. This Raynham Hall, an elegant English manor located in Norfolk, has long been rumored to house one of the most famous ghostly apparitions in history. The Brown Lady, famed for the brown brocade dress she is said to wear. This spirit is believed to be the ghost of Lady Dorothy Walpole, a noblewoman who lived in the 18th century. Lady Dorothy's life was marked by scandal. She was the sister of Britain's first Prime Minister, Robert Walpole, and the second wife of Charles Townshend, the notoriously controlling owner of Raynham Hall. After accusations of infidelity, Dorothy was reportedly confined to the estate by her husband, where she lived in isolation until her death in 1726, supposedly of smallpox. However, rumors swirled that she had actually been murdered or left to die in despair. For decades, visitors and residents of Raynham Hall reported eerie encounters. Dorothy's spirit was said to wander the grand staircase and hallways, her figure veiled in a mysterious glow. Witnesses described her eyes as dark hollows and her expression as sorrowful yet haunting. However, the most compelling evidence of her existence came in 1936, when photographers for Country Life magazine captured what remains one of the most iconic ghost photographs of all time. The incident occurred during a photo shoot of Raynham Hall for a feature article. As the photographers prepared their equipment in the grand staircase area, one of them noticed a misty form descending the steps. He quickly took a photo, and when the image was developed, it revealed a translucent figure of a woman in a flowing gown. This photograph, now known as the Brown Lady image, became a sensation, sparking widespread debate about its authenticity. While skeptics suggested the image was a result of double exposure or tampering, the photographers vehemently denied any trickery. The photograph has been studied extensively, with experts divided on whether it is a genuine capture of a ghost or an elaborate hoax. Regardless, the image cemented the legend of the Brown Lady in paranormal lore. To this day, visitors to Raynham Hall claim to encounter Dorothy's restless spirit. Some report seeing her on the staircase, while others sense her presence in the chilly, dimly lit hallways. The Brown Lady is said to bring an air of melancholy, as if her spirit remains trapped in the agony of her unjust confinement. The story of the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall stands as one of the most enduring ghost stories in the world. Whether viewed as historical tragedy or supernatural mystery, Lady Dorothy's tale continues to captivate skeptics and believers alike, reminding us of the thin veil between the living and the dead. Her story says, the ghosts of the Tower of London. The Tower of London, an imposing fortress on the banks of the River Thames, has stood as a symbol of power, imprisonment, and execution for nearly 1,000 years. Its dark history of torture and death has given rise to countless tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena, making it one of the most haunted locations in the world. Among the many spirits said to inhabit the tower, none is more famous than Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII. Anne was executed on the Tower Green in 1536, accused of adultery, incest, and treason. Charges many historians believe were fabricated to justify her death. Witnesses claim her spirit roams the tower, sometimes headless, dressed in the elegant gown she wore on the day of her beheading. Her most frequent haunt is the Chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where her remains are buried. Guards have reported hearing her mournful sobs, and some have even claimed to see her headless figure walking solemnly down the corridors. Another well-known specter is the White Lady, who is often spotted in the White Tower, the oldest part of the fortress. Her presence is marked by the overwhelming scent of lilies, and she is said to wave from a window where she has been seen by both tourists and staff. Her identity remains a mystery, though some believe she may be the ghost of a prisoner who died during the Tudor period. The story of the princes in the tower is another tragic chapter in the tower's haunted history. In 1483, Edward V and his younger brother, Richard, were confined to the tower by their uncle, Richard I.E., who sought to claim the throne. The two boys mysteriously disappeared, and their fate remains uncertain, though it is widely believed they were murdered. Visitors have reported seeing the spectral figures of two young boys holding hands, wandering the grounds in silence. Their apparitions are said to radiate a deep sadness, as if their spirits remain trapped in the tower where their lives were cruelly cut short. The tower is also home to less well-known, but equally chilling, hauntings. The ghost of Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, is said to appear on the anniversary of her execution in 1554. Sir Walter Raleigh, imprisoned in the tower for treason, has also been spotted in the area that once served as his cell. Guards have reported hearing phantom footsteps echoing through the stone corridors and seeing shadowy figures vanish into thin air. Even the tower's modern-day yeoman warders, known as the Beefeaters, have shared unsettling encounters, including doors slamming shut on their own cold spots, and the inexplicable feeling of being watched. The Tower of London remains a site of fascination, both for its historical significance and its reputation as one of the most haunted places in Britain. Its ghosts serve as a chilling reminder of the lives lost within its walls and a dark legacy of power, betrayal, and tragedy. We said, the Myrtles Plantation, hauntings, 1796. Nestled in the quiet town of St. Francisville, Louisiana, the Myrtles Plantation has a reputation as one of the most haunted homes in the United States. Built in 1796 by General David Bradford, the plantation is said to be home to at least 12 spirits, with its most famous being Chloe, a slave whose tragic story became the foundation for many of the hauntings. Legend has it that Chloe was caught eavesdropping on her master's conversations. As punishment, her ear was cut off, forcing her to wear a green turban to hide the disfigurement. Seeking revenge, Chloe baked a cake laced with poison, intending to sicken the family and regain favor by nursing them back to health. Instead, the poison killed the wife and 2 daughters. Overcome with guilt, Chloe confessed to other slaves, who hanged her and threw her body into the Mississippi River. Today, Chloe's spirit is often seen wandering the plantation, her green turban unmistakable. Guests report strange occurrences such as footsteps echoing in empty halls, ghostly handprints on mirrors, and the sound of children crying. The plantation's eerie energy leaves many visitors convinced that the spirits of Chloe and others still linger. Story Ike. The Winchester Mystery House, 1884-1922. In St. Joseph, California, stands the bizarre and sprawling Winchester Mystery House, built by Sarah Winchester, the widow of the firearms magnate William Wirt Winchester. After her husband's death, Sarah was consumed by grief and fear, believing she was cursed by the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles. A medium advised her to move west and build a house to appease the spirits, ensuring the construction never stopped. Pursued for 38 years, Sarah added onto her home in a chaotic manner, resulting in staircases that lead to nowhere, doors that open into walls, and windows in the floor. She believed that the constant building would confuse the spirits and keep her safe. The house's odd design and tragic history have made it a hotbed for paranormal activity. Visitors report hearing whispers, footsteps, and even seeing ghostly figures roaming the halls. Some believe Sarah's spirit still resides there, overseeing the home that became her obsession. For two-night and story. The Ghosts of Alcatraz Prison, 1934-1963. Alcatraz, located on a rocky island in San Francisco Bay, is one of the most infamous prisons in history. Known for housing some of the most dangerous criminals, including Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly, the prison operated from 1934 to 1963. While Alcatraz is no longer an active penitentiary, its dark and violent past has left behind chilling echoes of the lives that ended within its walls. Wards and inmates during its operational years reported unusual phenomena. In cell block D, known as the Hole, prisoners claimed to feel icy cold spots and an oppressive presence. One notorious tale involves a prisoner who was locked in solitary confinement in the Hole. He screamed throughout the night, claiming that a creature with glowing red eyes was in the cell with him. By morning, he was found dead, strangled, with no evidence of how it could have happened. Some guards whispered that the devil himself had come for the man. Visitors today report hearing unexplained sounds, clanging cell doors, echoing footsteps, and faint whispers that seem to drift through the empty corridors. One of the most active spots is the prison hospital, where disembodied moans and shadows are often seen moving through the sterile, decaying rooms. Al Capone, who famously played the banjo during his time in Alcatraz, is said to haunt the prison still, where staff and tourists claim to hear the faint sound of a banjo coming from the shower area where he used to practice. The eerie isolation of Alcatraz, coupled with its brutal history, has cemented its reputation as one of the most haunted places in America. 11 story. The ghost ship SS Orang Medan Meri, 1947. The story of the SS Orang Medan is one of maritime history's most chilling mysteries. In 1947, distress signals were received from the Dutch freighter as it traveled through the Strait of Malacca, sent in Morse code read. All officers, including captain, are dead, lying in chart room and bridge, possibly whole crew dead. This was followed by a final cryptic transmission. A nearby ship, the Silver Star, raced to the location and found the Orang Medan adrift. Boarding the vessel, the crew was met with a horrifying sight. The entire crew, including the captain, lay dead with no visible injuries. Their faces were twisted in terror, mouths agape, and eyes wide as if witnessing something unspeakable. Even the ship's dog was found dead, snarling at an unseen threat. Before the Silver Star could tow the ship to port, smoke began to billow from its cargo hold. The rescuers barely escaped before the Orang Medan exploded and sank, leaving behind no evidence of what had happened. And speculation about the tragedy has ranged from chemical leaks to supernatural phenomena. Some believe the crew encountered a malevolent force or extraterrestrial presence. To this day, the fate of the SS Orang Medan remains an unsolved mystery, and its ghostly legend persists. 12. The Ghost of Resurrection Mary, 1930s. In Chicago, one of the most famous ghost stories involves Resurrection Mary, a phantom hitchhiker who haunts Archer Avenue near Resurrection Cemetery. The legend began in the 1930s when a young woman named Mary reportedly had an argument with her boyfriend at a dance hall. She stormed out and decided to walk home along Archer Avenue. Tragically, she was struck and killed by a passing car. Since her death, countless drivers have claimed to see a young woman wearing a white dress walking along the roadside. Some report picking her up as a hitchhiker. Mary typically remains silent, gesturing toward Resurrection Cemetery. Upon reaching the gates, she vanishes without a trace. One of the most famous sightings occurred in the 1970s, when a driver swerved to avoid a woman who appeared on the road, only to find no one there. Others have claimed to see Mary's pale face staring out from behind the cemetery gates. Resurrection Mary remains one of Chicago's most enduring ghost stories, with new sightings still reported. Story 13. The Screaming Skull of Bettescombe Manor is 1680s. In the 2C or Manor in Dorset, England, is home to one of the most bizarre hauntings in history, the Screaming Skull. According to legend, in the late 17th century, Azaria Pinney, the owner of the manor, brought back an enslaved before his death. The man requested that his remains be returned to his homeland. However, Pinney ignored this wish and buried the man on the estate. Soon after, unexplainable phenomena began. Blood-curdling screams echoed through the house at night, and objects moved on their own. The disturbances grew so intense that Pinney exhumed the body and brought the skull inside, placing it on display. The activity subsided, but the skull reportedly brings misfortune or death if removed from the manor. To this day, the Screaming Skull remains a symbol of Bettiscombe's dark history. Many believe that the enslaved man's spirit continues to haunt the estate, ensuring his wish is never forgotten. 314s. The Ghost of the Greenbrier Bride, 1897. In Greenbrier County, West Virginia, a ghost helped solve her own murder in one of the most unique cases of paranormal justice. In 1897, Zona Heaster Shue was found dead in her home. Her death initially ruled a result of natural cause. However, Zona's mother, Mary Jane Heaster, claimed her daughter's spirit visited her over several nights, revealing that her husband, Edward Shue, had strangled her in a fit of rage. Mary Jane took her claims to the authorities, convincing them to exhume Zona's body. The autopsy revealed that Zona's neck had been broken, consistent with Mary Jane's ghostly testimony. Edward Shue was arrested, tried, and convicted of murder, thanks in part to the spirit's intervention. Zona's story is unique in that it brought about a real conviction and remains a compelling case for the power of the paranormal. 315. The Ghosts of Eastern State Penitentiary, 1829-1970. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia was designed as a place of reform but became infamous for its cruel practices and haunted reputation. Opened in 1829, the prison pioneered solitary confinement, where inmates were kept in isolation for 23 hours a day. The psychological toll was immense, with many prisoners losing their sanity. Since its closure in 1971, Eastern State has become a hotspot for ghost hunters. Visitors report hearing anguished cries, footsteps in empty cell blocks, and shadowy figures darting through the halls. One of the most active areas is Cell Block 12, where guests claim to hear disembodied voices and wails. The penitentiary's oppressive energy and its history of suffering make it one of the most haunted locations in the United States. 316s. The Curse of the Hope Diamond, 1600s. The Hope Diamond, one of the most famous jewels in the world, is as notorious for its beauty as it is for the alleged curse attached to it. The diamond, a 45-52-carat deep blue gem, is believed to have originated in India, where it was stolen from a statue of the Hindu goddess. Legend says that the theft cursed the diamond, bringing misfortune and death to all who possessed it. One of the earliest documented owners, French merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, reportedly met his end after acquiring the diamond. His body was said to have been ravaged by wolves. The stone was later owned by King Louis XVI, who had it recut and renamed the French blue. Both Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who inherited the diamond, were guillotined during the French Revolution. Subsequent owners faced similar fates. A Greek merchant and his family died in a car crash shortly after acquiring the gem. Another owner, Jacques Collot, reportedly went mad and committed suicide. The Hope Diamond's curse culminated in its transfer to the Smithsonian Institution in 1958, where it remains today, seemingly dormant. However, many visitors to the museum report feeling uneasy or sensing a strange aura around the display, as if the curse's energy still lingers. 317. The Phantom of the HMS Queen Mary, 1936. The RMS Queen Mary, an iconic ocean liner turned World War II ship, is renowned for its luxurious history and the spirit said to haunt its decks. Docked in Long Beach, California, as a floating hotel and museum, the Queen Mary is considered one of the most haunted ships in the world. Among the many spirits aboard is John Petter, a 17-year-old crew member who was crushed by a watertight door during a routine drill in 1966. Guests often hear metallic banging near the engine room, and some claim to see a young man in overalls walking through the area before vanishing. Another famous spirit is that of a lady in white, often seen dancing in the ship's grand ballroom. Her ethereal figure, dressed in a flowing gown, glides across the floor before fading into thin air. The first-class swimming pool is also a hotspot for paranormal activity, with sightings of ghostly women in vintage bathing suits and unexplained wet footprints appearing on dry tiles. The ship's dark wartime history is added to its haunted reputation. During World War II, the Queen Mary collided with an escort ship, slicing it in half and killing over 300 sailors. Crew members have reported hearing the desperate cries of drowning men echoing through the ship's lower decks. With so many tragic events tied to the Queen Mary, it's no surprise that the ship remains a haven for restless spirits. Story 18. The Haunting of Leap Castle, 1300s. Leap Castle in County Offaly, Ireland, is considered one of the most haunted castles in the world, with a history steeped in bloodshed, betrayal, and the supernatural. Built in the 13th century, the castle became infamous during the O'Carroll family's reign and known for their violent rivalries. The most notorious event occurred in the chapel, now known as the Bloody Chapel, where one O'Carroll brother murdered another during a family dispute. Visitors today report seeing the ghost of the murdered brother wandering the chapel and its adjoining halls. Leap Castle's most terrifying entity is the Elemental, a malevolent spirit believed to have been summoned during an occult ritual. Witnesses describe the Elemental as a shadowy figure with a grotesque, decaying face and a pungent sulfuric odor. It's said to bring feelings of dread and unease to anyone who encounters it. The castle also harbors the spirits of prisoners discovered in an oubliette, a secret dungeon where captives were left to die. When the oubliette was uncovered, hundreds of skeletal remains were found, many impaled on wooden spikes. Their anguished cries are said to echo through the castle's cold stone walls to this day. 19. The Ghosts of the Stanley Hotel, 1909. The Stanley Hotel, located in Estes Park, Colorado, is famously known as the inspiration for Stephen King's The Shining. However, the real-life hauntings of the Stanley Hotel are just as chilling as King's fictional Overlook Hotel. Defy Stanley, the hotel's founder, and his wife Flora, are said to haunt the grand building. Flora's spirit is often heard playing the piano in the music room, her melodies drifting through the otherwise silent halls. F.O.E. Stanley's been spotted in the lobby and the billiard room, watching over the property he cherished in life. It's reported a variety of supernatural encounters. Room 217 is the most infamous, where housekeeper Elizabeth Wilson is said to linger. In 1911, she survived a gas explosion in the room but continues to tidy up in the afterlife. Risk have woken to find their luggage unpacked, lights turned on, or the bed mysteriously made. The fourth floor is another hotspot for activity. It was once the servants' quarters, and visitors report hearing the laughter and footsteps of children running through the halls. Ghostly figures of children have even appeared in photographs taken by unsuspecting guests. With its eerie beauty and history of paranormal activity, the Stanley Hotel remains a destination for thrill seekers and ghost hunters alike. 320. The Whaley House Hauntings, 1857. The Whaley House in San Diego, California, is often called the most haunted house in America. Built in 1857 by Thomas Whaley on the site of a former gallows, the house has a long and tragic history that includes executions, suicides, and untimely deaths. The most infamous ghost is that of Yankee Jim Robinson, a thief hanged on the property before the Whaley family moved in. His heavy footsteps are heard on the second floor, accompanied by a dark presence that unnerves visitors. Thomas Whaley himself has been seen in the parlor, dressed in a frock coat and top hat, his spectral figure greeting guests as if still the master of the house. Anna Whaley, Thomas's wife, is also a frequent apparition, often spotted lingering in the garden or on the staircase. Visitors describe her presence as calm but sorrowful, a reflection of the many losses she endured during her life. The Whaley children are believed to haunt the home as well. The sounds of a baby crying are often reported, thought to be the spirit of Thomas and Anna's infant son who died of scarlet fever. The figure of a young girl, believed to be a neighbor's child who died in a tragic accident on the property, has also been seen skipping through the halls. With its layered history and chilling encounters, the Whaley House has become a must-visit for those seeking a brush with the supernatural.